I'll start it off with Ken Mandel. Ken, you talked about the flattening of the sales funnel. So when you say flattening of the sales funnel, what do you mean? And why is it flattening?
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. The flattening of the funnel has been going on for quite a while. So the funnel being that classic marketing funnel of awareness, consideration, and purchase. So what's happened, I guess, in the digital era, when we first had digital marketing, is that it was much easier to become aware of products. You could use Google and search. There was great targeting. And then the consideration also sped up because there was much richer media, video, and so you could really start understanding what a product could do for you. But then the purchase part was stuck. It wasn't easy to buy online several years ago. But what's happened now is that whole funnel has sped up where you can go from awareness, consideration, and purchase in a single swoop. So literally, media and commerce are interconnected now. And of course, there's content in the middle of that sandwich. And so what we're seeing now is a huge amount of e-commerce activity. I mean, in 2017, there's about $2.3 trillion of e-commerce dollars globally. In 3 years, it goes to 4.5 trillion. And what's really interesting is about 3 trillion of that is Asia Pacific. So definitely we're in the sweet spot. On the consumer side, though, there's something else happening. Not only is the funnel getting faster and therefore flattening, but there's an unlimited amount of product information out there. So advertising is not necessarily the true north anymore of product information. There's other sources of information, reviews from friends, going on to large players like Lazada, and actually understanding content on that platform, and then whammo, you purchase it in the same go. So that's that whole, flattening. But what's also really great is that you're starting to see the barriers come down. Trust is much more prevalent, especially if your credit card is kept with a large player, like our friends at Lazada. But also the barriers are gone in terms of actually buying online. Now you can put your thumb, get all your information there, and you're not filling out a form. And I guess with Apple's release today, we'll see more, facial recognition as well. So that's what I mean by flattening of the funnel.
Okay. And the penetration of mobile is having a lot of impact on this as well. Yeah. But there's also something else that's kind of driving part of this, which is having the intelligence and how intelligence is being leveraged to make programs, to power programs in a marketing sense. So performance marketing is becoming more intelligence-led. And Rosemary, what exactly, can you describe to us what that intelligence is doing to spur conversion?
Sure. So, intelligence is really, I guess, the synthesis of knowledge, right? And that's the acquisition and synthesis of it. And because there are so many technology platforms available to us today, we're actually able to synthesize knowledge quicker, faster, and better than we ever have been. And that intelligence is actually helping to spur on e-commerce, understanding consumers, understanding that funnel better, so that we're actually able to drive, better business returns when we're running marketing programs. And that's really quite amazing, right? We wouldn't be able to do that 10 years ago, right? So that's what we mean by intelligence from our perspective as a performance marketer. And we do it every day. In the previous session, we were talking about risk-taking. Some of that stuff, that risk that you need to take, because you have the data and the information and you're able to synthesize that knowledge, it actually makes it easier to actually say, okay, I want to do this because I have a little bit more knowledge to be able to, back up a little bit of a risk that we want to take.
Okay. It sounds like there's a vital importance around gathering information and insights. As I said in my preparation discussion with Arshan, insights. I'm not too sure where to find them. Can you help teach us a little bit about where we might be getting insights? and being able to capture and understand them?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately it starts and ends with the consumer. And if you look at the consumer of today, the consumer is evolving. And with that evolution, I think to Ken's point, that's what's creating that flat funnel along the way as well. The reason being that consumer of today wants a seamless experience. It's relatively omni-channel. And within that context, that means that vast array of data that's available through all these channels has created a fragmented audience. And what do I mean by that? So if you look at insights, for that matter of fact, today you can actually pick up data points from a given consumer from an altitude of different arrays, such as from wearable devices, from smart cars, from their connected TV, and ultimately then try and put this all into one singular view. When you get that singular view of that particular consumer, of these insights from all these array of different platforms and omni-channel perspective, that is when you can then pertain the intelligence on top of it. I think also to Ken's point earlier on sort of the flattening of the funnel, I think WeChat in China is a great example, and also alongside the insights that I'm talking about. So if you look at WeChat in China, for example, I think it's a platform whereby today the entire funnel process happens within the context of what historically was a social platform, and today right down to awareness, consideration, path to purchase, and actual acquisition as well.
Okay. And if you're not able to go across multitudes of touch points, brands are also choosing to go directly to the source of that behavior. So Charles, you mentioned the fact that brands are working with Lazada in a very focused way. Can you talk to us about that and give us an example?
Sure. I think before I go into that, I think I'll bounce a bit on what was said before. I think the first thing was flattening on the funnel. And we've seen that as well when we had this experiment where we had a video on Lazada where the products in this video were clickable. And we saw massive engagement. People were consuming information content and then directly buying the product right after. So I think that's really a consumer aspiration that the market has not really well satisfied. I think the same way, you have brands who are all trying to tell stories to consumers. But often, if you look at what they do online, these stories end up either with no landing page or on a page where the customer cannot buy. So there are all these dead ends. And so what we want to tell brands is, hey guys, we are an e-commerce platform, but you can also see us as part of your marketing strategy. We're a marketing partner for you. You have this conversation that you start online. Don't make the conversation stop at the door of the store. Keep that content, make it also on the store. Take the same story, right? So you look at, so brands work with us, for example, FMCG space, we had a few examples where they had this video series with influencer teaching young adults how to use makeup. I'm not an expert, but, and what they did is they linked all their content to their shop-in-shop on Lazada, and they had similar video and other videos on Lazada, and then they could directly purchase their products that they were getting informed from the video. And so we really think that's what consumers want, right? You don't have this physical barrier you have offline where you get the information on TV, then you need to walk to the store, and only there you can purchase. This barrier does not exist anymore. It's just that I think we, as the industry, have not really provided that seamless experience that consumers want. And I think from a data perspective, that's where it becomes interesting too. Because you have all these online marketing campaigns, but then, again, there's this wall, it's dead end. So you don't know what the performance is. And so what we're trying to do, and we've been working on this for the last 6 to 8 months, is to really break that barrier and also give visibility to what is the ROI of these campaigns. You're sending traffic to Lazada, we're going to tell you, hey, this is how many conversions you got for each of your different campaigns. And that's going to help you make sense of what campaign actually drives to a sale and which one doesn't. So I think we're early stage in that direction, but I think it's important that people don't just see us as a place to sell, but more of, hey, this is an important touch point within the thousands of touch points we have online. And so how can we best leverage that touch point to tell the stories we have to consumers and to measure the impact we have for consumers?
Okay. And it was discussed that retailers, e-retailers, are becoming the publishers of the future. So in your example, you talked about how consumers are going directly to the source to understand and to convert. Are e-retailers good publishers?
Yeah, I think they're starting to be. It's a very early journey. I think most e-retailers are not used to being publishers. I think the good ones are exploring how to be a publisher partner. But what Charles said, about the fact that the consumers want to actually see products and then buy products and therefore don't send them to a store without a cash register. I mean, that's essentially what's happening when you send traffic, when you drive media to a landing environment that doesn't allow you to buy anything. It's like walking into a store and there's no cash register. You can't buy. I mean, intuitively, it doesn't make sense. And so I think what a lot of e-retailers, like Amazon, like Lazada, Alibaba, Tmall, Flipkart, et cetera, have realized is that consumers are going to their platforms to browse. In fact, we've already seen statistics. The most famous stat is the US stat, so apologies, but it's about 55% of consumers in the US start their product search on Amazon. And I've heard that can be up to 65% on Tmall. I don't know if you have data as well, but I think regardless, we're seeing a trend where the consumer is going to an e-retailer to get an idea of what they want to buy. They're not going to Google first, they're going to an e-retailer. They still search is still important, but there's another player in town. And what's extremely interesting is that the e-retailer may not always get the sale, but if you don't have a shop-in-shop or a brand zone on Lazada, then you're not going to be represented when I'm searching to buy something. So what I'm saying is the e-retailer is that first path or that first place on the path to purchase. Sometimes it's the final path, but sometimes it's just that place where you go to start comparing products. Because if I go to Nike.com, I can't look at Adidas. But if I go, to Zalora, I can look at several brands and then get an idea of what I want to buy. I might complete that purchase omni-channel style. Did I just invent omni-channel style? Can you? Yeah. I don't even know what that is. But the idea of going to a physical retailer and completing the purchase happens all the time. So they are the publishers of the future.
Okay.
I think I just want to add to that. So, we're talking about e-retailers. That actually expands to, e-commerce players, right? So we talk about, say, the travel industry and hoteliers. And some hoteliers are actually now taking their brands back, right? So they have their e-commerce, websites where you can actually transact. But actually, they're creating experiences for customers, right? So, we have a client who has taken a leap of faith and actually created a non-branded environment all about travel experiences. It's not branded, their brand, it is about the customer. And the way that we actually are able to track it back from a performance perspective to put a bit of, some money behind the commerce behind it is actually utilizing media, utilizing technology, remarketing, and actually tracking it back to the e-commerce website where people can transact. So we talk about convergence of media, content, and commerce. That is, these are the things that are happening today, and that convergence is happening more and more. And brands like Lazada and other ones that are out there, e-commerce brands are actually becoming the publishers of tomorrow, and performance agencies are working with them to be able to do that.
And they tell the story beautifully, and it's aspirational, yeah. And it makes you want to explore the destinations they talk about, and they make it super simple for you to act on that desire at the time.
Yeah, and it's just a different way of how brands are embracing this changing environment.
I mean, ultimately, I think there's nothing more valuable than understanding that point of purchase. And historically, if you look at the manner in which you've seen the rise of the walled gardens come through, for example, we never had an open ecosystem. Whereas I think a lot of the e-commerce players today, in that point of purchase, then they're allowing that brand to actually get that exposure of what was that path to purchase as well. And I think that's quite defining. Also going back to the point, I think, on the element of data itself, I think that has also changed on a brand's level. So I think about 3 or 4 years ago, the reason why we did not see that evolution strongly enough on Convergence was because brands did not take that ownership. But today, if you look at a lot of the brands, I think they've realized that you need to invest in technology. you need to invest in people that understand technology. And at the same time, you need to have, for all the data that you're collecting, the enablement of things like machine learning, for example, also helps you to make sense of the data quite quickly. So I think when you put that and the fact that it's a lot more of an open ecosystem together, then it's priceless for a brand.
Okay. When we hear from brands who are leaning forward to utilize digital and leverage these insights and do that, Kimberly-Clark, Unilever, P&G, can you give me an example of someone that you think does it right? All right, so we're talking about something where we're using content, we're using this flattened sales funnel, and we are working with people to get out of the way, reduce the number of steps. Who do you think is doing a good job? Do you have an example that you can share of like someone who did a program and did it right, even if you can't name the brand?
I mean, there's several brands out there that have understood what omnichannel truly is, which means that you can purchase their SKUs or their product anywhere. But they've also understood that it's important to be present on an e-retailer. There's value of having a brand.com site as well, because you have a certain amount of data you can capture on your brand.com that you're not going to get from an e-retailer, at least not yet. And then they've also realized physical stores are an important touch point. Right, so Under Armour, I think, does a good job, in terms of activewear. Right, it's always interesting because if you're going to ask me about FMCG, it's harder, but I do think P&G does an excellent job as well. When we do a lot of audits, e-merchandising audits online, and we look at virtual share of shelf. And P&G always ranks high in terms of having the right type of images. E-commerce is a game of inches. It's not very sexy, but it's really important to get your images right. I'll give you an example with Pampers. So Pampers realized that when you put a pack shot of diapers online, you really don't know how big that pack is because there's really no reference point. But when you walk into a supermarket at fair price, you can see it's that big, and you go, yeah, there's 50 diapers in there. So one of the suggestions we made was put the count on the pack for the shots that are going to be on an e-retailer. So as soon as the consumer looks at the diapers, they know, yeah, there's 14 diapers or 40 diapers. For that price, that's a good deal. It's a very little thing, but those are the things you have to get right. So it's not always about the sexy. It's sometimes about the not so sexy.
I've surprised myself a number of times by having a 6-pack of 1 liter sparkling waters delivered when I thought I was ordering the small bottles. But Lazada, Charles, you guys are masters at doing this. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you do it?
I mean, the masters of the brands, but we try to work more and more with some of the top brands to create some really sexy or impactful as well campaigns. I think we've done quite a few in the FMCG space. So I was mentioning this video series we did connecting with our shop in shop. We also partnered. One brand was a sponsor of a TV show. We actually worked together with a production company and did an extension of what was visible on the TV show on Lazada, where we also had the celebrities from the show coming on Lazada and being interviewed, talking about how they use the products, etc., and have exclusive offers available only on Lazada. So I think that was very interesting. We work with a brand in the how do you call this, infant milk formula business. We did an innovative campaign here where it was more leveraging data and how can we use all the data points we collect on Lazada to target the right people. And it's, funnily enough, it's a business where there's specific times where people make their decision making on what brand they're going to use for the first 3 years. And so we were able to help target the right people to do just that. So yeah, in 2 days actually we were launching with a new pretty high-profile FMCG brand. So they're going to be taking over the entire front page of Lazada. So that's going to be pretty exciting. A big awareness play they're doing there. But I think so I think brands are really starting. We've only started doing this in the last 6 months and 8 months. And I think more and more brands are starting to look at this. I think the fact that Alibaba invested in Lazada, now we're 83% owned by Alibaba, and I think now a lot of the brands heard about all the success stories in China, and they start to look at what happens there. And there is really remarkable what they do. And brands really understand that Tmall is just beyond a transactional platform, it's a marketing platform. Some brands do campaigns just for the awareness to be there. So I think it was a car manufacturer that took the entire homepage of Tmall for a day. They didn't really care about the number of cars they were going to sell. It was just to reach these people and make an impact in the market. If I may say one last thing, I think talk about media and being publishers. I think there's still an area where collectively we also need to improve. I think it's on the content that we can serve on our e-commerce platform. I think that we have had examples in the past, either in the US with a house.com or companies like Jack Threads and Thrillist, where they kind of really combine content and commerce. I think in China it's very big as well with Tmall, Taobao, lots of content to really get the users engaged. And I think we've been doing some very, I think, cool campaigns with some of these big brands, but a lot of it has been, utilizing the existing ideas they have, existing assets they have, and kind of adapting them a bit to an e-commerce environment. But I think we can go much further than that. I think consumers are actually eager to browse more and consume much more content. And I think it's not yet in the marketing teams, both of the brands and also maybe on our side as well, in our habits to really produce this. I think that's going to be a big trend coming over the next year.
Agreed. Understanding how this is evolving, are there any things that we need to avoid? Okay, so trying to do things the right way sometimes is helped by knowing what not to do. So are there any things that you can share with us that are, make sure your data is cleansed, make sure that you have really looked at the right touch points to measure? Any tips in that area?
I guess it's start with a really, really clear objective and know what you want to achieve at that end goal. Often, we work with different brands, and sometimes, the different stakeholders have different objectives, and that isn't entirely clear. So that would be one. Knowing what you want to measure is also something that's really important, and actually taking the time to go through what is needed to do that as a team with the clients, within our own teams, to be able to do that. So because sometimes we get briefs, but they're not really a brief. So take that time in the beginning to be able to determine what you need, and then work through it.
Arshan?
Yeah, no, I think measurement is that big key ultimately. So I think, what are you actually trying to track? How are you measuring it? And from there, how are you attributing it as well? Unless you've got a view of that consumer from end to end, and on a single view, you're not understanding much. And if you're not measuring, then you can't improve anything either. So I think it all starts and ends with measurement and attribution.
Oh, that slippy little word, attribution. Charles, do you want to build on that?
I was maybe just refer to the previous panel. I think, this is new, right? So I think companies that are doing a good job are the ones that are not afraid to take risks and to pilot. And what was great is that we can measure, and so we can A/B test, do a lot of, within a couple of weeks we can start a new campaign, and immediately you start seeing the results. So I think the thing not to do is not to try. So you need to try and fail and iterate. I think that's the typical startup web mantra, but I think this fail fast is very important.
I think it's always been true, and that when you take a calculated risk, it favors your business outcomes. And not doing anything in broadcasting and advertising is why we have these conferences, to help everyone to realize that they can do these things.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that A/B test after this, right? So you said it live on stage. So the thing that also has to happen, and I agree with everyone, but I also somewhat disagree that it's that easy. I mean, no one's saying it's easy, but there's an alignment that needs to happen to master commerce, media, and content. And that alignment has to happen in your organization, and that's between sales and marketing. These two departments are not always aligned. One's very hardcore sales driven, obviously. You can guess that's the sales department. And the other one is about branding, brand equity, not always sales. These two teams need to come together to be successful in commerce. And that's often very challenging. In fact, if your sales and your marketing team are not aligned, you will not be successful at e-commerce.
Other simple lessons. I was talking with someone on the other side yesterday, and the analysis was really quick. It's very hard to do digital transactions utilizing old world advertising. It doesn't speak to these audiences. You've got to be where they are, and you've got to be relevant to what, you've got to speak to them honestly in their language, and you've got to be where they are. You cannot use television to sell a digital subscription. It's not where they are. So,
I mean, I think it's the new economy clients who have done a really good job. So if you look at the Ubers, the Grabs of the world, I mean, probably Grab, a better example of a homegrown company out here, which I think, they put data science at the central part of the organization. I guess that, to Ken's point, brings a bit more relevance. But at the same time, it wasn't just their media or marketing decisions that were taken upon. It's real-time feedback to productization as well that happened. So I think closing that loop across the business with data science central is what's perhaps that change that's critical. And they are probably an example to your question of somebody who does it well.
Sure.
Sorry, can I just build on that? Because I think you're talking about e-retailers being the publishers of the future. Prediction, Grab will be a publisher of the future because you're going to it every day, sometimes twice a day. It's a very high context touch point. So that allows them to potentially be a publisher.
And the relevance in terms of a contextual level is incredible as well. And you can see that from the content that they're driving at the moment.
And where Uber keeps getting in trouble for using that intelligence unfairly. Yes, it's true. Okay. Do you agree or disagree that, doing nothing will lead to you losing control of your brand, the way Rolex and eBay, Rolex became more go to eBay to buy a Rolex than go to a store? In China, Nike lost control of the Air Force One because so many fans of the Air Force One were opening their own e-commerce stores that 80% of the search results were for independent stores, not Nike.com. Is there any danger of inaction? Right? Is there? Or can we just wait this one out?
I think more than inaction, a lot of the brands keep looking backwards. I think there's a saying that in today's day and age, you need to look at your windshield and stop looking at the rear view mirror to see what's happening behind you. They're always looking at historical data, historical numbers in order to make decisions. But ultimately, I think it's back to the point of A/B testing and looking forward of what the opportunity holds ahead. I think that needs to be the different take that these brands need to take on. So sitting and not doing anything, you will fail.
I think that's a very Formula One analogy. Didn't Mario Andretti say that?
Sets up for the weekend.
Never looks behind him. He just only cares about what's in front of him.
That's Chase Carey.
That was good.
All right. You guys are all pretty much digital natives, okay? When you work with brands, are all of the brands that you're working with sort of savvy to the digital insights and opportunities, or is there still learning to do? How do we address that?
There's always learning, right? I mean, even though we're digital natives, we learn every day. There's always something happening that is different. So, the different brands are at different levels for us anyway. Some of them are at a very nascent stage, some of them are mid-tier, and some of them are more advanced. There's a lot of them, though, that are very nascent, and what we try to do is, try to educate them. Coming to these sessions, creating workshops, and also we talked about testing and learning, actually taking baby steps with them and showing what's possible, because once you help them I guess solve one problem and it is positive, it gives them confidence to do more, right? And that's what we do. So
good.
If I may give some war stories.
Go right ahead.
I mean, Lazada is only 5.5 years old. So I was one of the founders in Vietnam, and back in 2013, I got the door, to my face several times by some of the, largest brands there is worldwide. So I think, 3 years ago, no one was looking at commerce. So yes, it is a new thing. I think a lot of companies are learning, and I think the previous panel was very interesting for that, because it's they have this new challenge. It's growing, and how do you go about it? And so I think what I think was Lucy who said that companies with senior leadership being fully aligned and full on, these are the ones that actually are starting to staff their teams the best with people who already have experience either in the region or from outside the region, and are really committed to this trial and error and taking these baby steps. But I think yes, everyone I think is aggressively looking at it and working to solve it. But I think we're I see in the marketplace a lot of companies are trying to still learn.
I think one of the tools that we find useful is a e-commerce maturity curve, where we put it in front of our clients and we say, this is the maturity curve. Where do you feel that you are? Sometimes there's agreement, sometimes there's not alignment on even within the organization, but mostly they figure out that they're somewhere on that curve. And that's fine, because once you establish where you are in the curve, your only mission is to scale up and go up and to the right. And how you get there is actually execution. There's no easy way to do it.
And insights. Yes, all very good.
And test and learn.
I think that acceleration as well, or where we are with digital at this point. I know we're talking about education, we're talking about all these other components, but I think the tools that have been made available and technology that's been made available has also changed a hell of a lot. I mean, from what I'm seeing over the course of the last 5 years itself, when we first started, talking about programmatic, for example, a lot of the tools that were there were very simplified. It meant, yes, automation was enabled, but it still meant you need 15 or 20 people in order to get that task done. Whereas today, I think with the tools advancement that's there, with the likes of machine learning to understand data a lot better, process the data and give you true, real insights that you can then utilize in a real-time fashion, and then you put AI on top of that and actually utilize it in real time, it's become a lot more straightforward and easy. And that's also a big evolutional change for the organization. So historically, a company, if they wanted to transform, they had to hire 15, 20, 30 people. But now I think the tools are enabling the teams to very simplistically and easily accelerate through that journey much quicker, I believe.
All right, Arshan, so I was working through a path for machine learning to process massive amounts of data this morning. And I just think it's funny that you say machine learning and algorithms and simple in the same sentence, because I'm not sure everyone out here is going to feel they're simple. My note to that is I love coming to these events because afterwards you can walk right up to these people and you can say, who do I talk to about content? How do I understand what insights look like from different touch points? Is programmatic bad? And you can talk to these people. Honestly, just walk up to them, get 5 minutes, and it'll give you a good direction. You'll know where you might be sitting on the curve. And it's just the way to get started. Go up and have coffee with some of these people at this event. It's the real value, all right? Or a beer afterwards. Rosemary, you said that we've had most of this capability for more than 17 years. What's changed? So if the idea of remarketing, if the idea of targeting, the idea of relevancy, if all of that sort of existed, but you needed 30 people to do it, what's changing?
What's changing? Technology is definitely enabling us to do this. I think you had mentioned that. So we're going to be able to do it bigger, faster, stronger. The market is changing. There are disruptors that are coming in that are forcing brands to actually relook at what they do and be that. So you take a look at here, right? Taxi cabs, right? So there's Comfort Delgro, there's Uber, there's Grab. Grab, Uber have definitely disrupted that, and these marketers are needing to look. On the e-commerce space, we have online and offline retailers, but then there's true only online retailers that are disrupting the space and actually forcing brands to relook at how they are able to connect media content and commerce, right? So that's happening. And the technology thing definitely is making it change.
We're very excited about the new entrants in the Singapore and the Southeast Asian market. And as Ken said, there's a lot of lift in these markets. So very exciting times. Arshan.
I think just to add to that, countries as well. So I think the transformation in a lot of economies and the larger, bigger nations have also changed that a hell of a lot, and that's what's giving the acceleration. So you take India, you take China, for example, the enablement of mobile devices, of smartphone devices, for that matter of fact, I think has transformed things. You take India for that given example, where I think there was a mobile provider about a year ago that gave free data to everyone for about a year. I think that on its own makes brands step up and realize we got to do something. Let it be in the space of content, or let it be in the space of mobile itself, which then very quickly changes the entire landscape in a given country.
And I'm certain there was a big cricket tournament on when they did it, because that's a perfect blend. So, all right, we've got a few minutes left. Going through this exercise with you, each one of you has something of a unique sort of perspective on this. Why don't you share some final thoughts with us? All right, so what's motivating you? What challenges are you addressing right now? And what do you think of the opportunities are like? Ken.
If you sit here, you get those questions first, right? That's the lesson I've learned. Like, go sit where.
We could flatten your sales funnel first.
Don't touch my funnel, James. I think the biggest
you're no funnel.
Learning. Well, you can tell it's getting late in the day. Is we're moving. If you take the advertising and media industry, which I'm in, what's changing is that we're moving from business metrics that we've created, which are essentially alphabet soup, CPM, CPC, GRP, blah, blah, blah. And we're actually moving through commerce, content, and media convergence. We're actually moving to cost per sale. And I can guarantee you that there's no conversation that is any more interesting than talking to a client about how much stuff you're going to sell for them. Talking about their CPM, CPC, GRPs, those are proxies to the actual truth, which is, what did you do for me in terms of selling my product? And this convergence that we've been talking about today allows you to do that. And that's what excites me.
Okay. Rosemary.
I guess final thoughts. I think we're in exciting times right now. The market is, fragmenting, but again, it's also coming together in different ways. And I think, taking the risk, the leap of faith, to test and do something is the first step. And then finding partners, whether it is people that you know or people that like coming to these events, and finding partners to potentially, help you. We speak to people on a regular basis, right? And it's, hey, free advice. And I think that is going to change and help the industry. So I'd say take the steps and keep on taking those baby steps, whether you're failing fast or learning fast or succeeding fast, and that's what I'd say.
Charles.
So I think on this topic, we need to start from what the consumer wants, and I think we need to realize that, yes, consumers want to be able to consume media, go through content, and purchase immediately. And I think you should look at an e-commerce platform as just one of the very important touch points of the digital shopper or digital consumer. And so the way I would look at it is, find a platform that allows you to keep that story you have for the consumer. And your question is more, how can I best utilize that touch point to maximize the impact of my consumers? I think traditional e-commerce companies were it was more like closed platforms. If you think of more like a traditional Amazon type, it's not really branded, but more China influenced platforms or platforms like Lazada, we were actually recognizing that challenge, and we're giving us a space for brands to express, to tell their stories, to express what the brand is about on the platform. So I think it's just rethinking what is the role of an e-commerce platform in your overall marketing strategy.
Great. Arshan.
I'm looking at the time. I think we've run out of time, so I'll be very quick with it. I think it's understanding the consumer of the future, what that consumer is going to look like in 2 years' time. I think we spoke a lot about it. The only constant is change at this point. The evolution of consumption and the manner in how people are consuming and the different platforms they're consuming on is going to keep changing. So knowing exactly for helping brands to understand who their consumer is going to be in 2 years' time, and making sure that we can actually show them the right ad at the right point at that time. I think that's what's sort of the work that we're doing towards.
All right, excellent. Thank each and every one of you for the time and your contributions, but most of all, thank you, Arshan, because Arshan's going to be a father within the next 48 hours, and he's sitting here with us. So congratulations, Arshan. Thank you so much. Thank you, panel. This was great.